I want to comment about something totally different at the moment. I want to comment about a citizen's arrest made by Internet Interceptors on a person called John Keeble in Christchurch, we understand. John Keeble in Christchurch. Anyone who was on the internet this afternoon, or particularly on Internet Interceptors page, I think at some point over 11,000 people watched them live stream that citizen's arrest. I want to say a few things. First of all, to Internet Interceptors, they're paedophile hunters. I want to say, great result, absolutely amazing. Fair comment, fair praise to every single one of you. I want people also to know that you do this in your own time. Excuse me. I want you to know that you don't accept any donations, you don't accept any charity or anything, and you go ensnaring these paedophiles for no gain for yourselves, and of course totally within the law. You are scrupulous in your observance of the law of this land, which does allow us as ordinary citizens to make a citizen's arrest of somebody else, and even if necessary to use reasonable and proportionate force to detain them until the police arrive. We are allowed to do that. That is what you did, and rightly for your protection and for the protection of the person that you are making the citizen's arrest on. You of course filmed the whole thing. Can I say, just like Internet Interceptors, there is absolutely no reason for anyone at all to go after this man's family. There is no reason at all, even if you know where he lives, obviously even to visit the premises. In fact, if you start harassing his family, you may well find yourselves arrested. This is about him. I want to just say something perhaps a little deeper based on what was said by him and what was revealed in the chat logs during his citizen's arrest. Now, okay, I'm glad that there were nearly 11,000, well, there were over 11,000 people watching. I'm very glad about that. I'm disappointed that the police took so long to attend. Okay, I know the police are very busy. I know the police are having to prioritise threats to life and limb. Obviously, they must. I quite understand that. But there's one point, well, possibly 2 points to add to that. If our police force were properly funded, if they received the pay that they richly deserve, if they had the numbers necessary, they would have attended this citizen's arrest much quicker. If you watch the video, you'll find it goes on probably for well over an hour and a half or so. I don't know exactly. But it took that much time for the police to get there. So I think we have to look at who is really going to fund our police rather than trying to get policing on the cheap. Now I'm going to leave that aside because obviously, well, it's not a political point. I think it's a valid point. I think we need the police there in these situations, and we need them there quickly. The next thing I'm going to say is to talk a little bit about what seemed to be not just the nature of what this man was doing, but what was in his mind. He was saying right at the beginning that his was just a sexual fantasy. He did not intend to act on this brutal, sadistic sexual fantasy that involved mutilation, that involved torture, that involved the infliction of pain, that involved humiliation and suffering. Of course, you must bear in mind that even the decoys who he was talking to, and we don't know if he had not talked to real people, real children as well, were quite clear that their ages were under an age of consent. You'll hear that on the video transcript. You'll hear quite clearly that this girl, a quote, obviously not really a girl, but this woman introduced her girl character as somewhere between, I think, the age of about 11 and 14. Somewhere between about that age. I think it is vitally important that we really address this problem, this threat in our society. I think it's not necessarily going to do anybody any good by restricting our freedom of use of the internet and freedom of information and things like that. But I do honestly think that this person was able to feed these sexual fantasies to a point where it almost became a reality. Let's assume that it hasn't, I don't know, become a reality before. Is that not frightening? This John Keeble, if he had actually met an 11, 12, 13 or 14-year-old girl, threatening to hurt and dismember them, I don't want to go into the details of too much of what was said, quite honestly. But, yeah, everyone has a fantasy life, don't we? And the Interceptors were saying, well, you know, my fantasy would have been something like riding a massive motorbike somewhere in a strange land or something like that. A kind of Avatar sort of fantasy. Now, I don't believe that for one single moment that every human being's fantasies are going to be alike. I'm sure there is also a dark side to people's fantasies as well. I think that's quite understandable. I think psychologists have discovered this. I think they have researched it. I think there is, in every human being, a dark side to fantasy as well. But my point is that this would remain part of an inner world. Not a world that intended to actually even take steps to carry these things out. It is possible for the human mind to imagine the most incredible things. I mean, for crying out loud, we're particularly inventive at imagining weapons of brutality and destruction. We're very inventive at doing that. We are outrageously inventive at so many things that obviously what goes on in our head, in the depth of our thoughts and whatever, could be anything you can imagine. I mean, for example, imagine horror films, slasher films. Imagine the Friday the 13th things. Imagine Freddy Krueger. Imagine those horrific images in Saw and Hostel and things like that. Why do they become popular as films? Because I think they explore a dark side to the human imagination. Of course they are exactly that. They are fantasy. They have not been made to be acted out. everybody that would watch them would understand that. And although it may appeal to the sick, dark fantasy life that I suppose somewhere in what Freud called the id, the unconscious, dark side of us, Freud called the id, I'm sure that part of the id, if we were honest as human beings, exists within us. However, Freud also went on to describe the ego, which is self-motivated drive, which is the things necessary to sustain life, shelter, nourishment, protection, safety. Those are part of the ego in ourselves, and we need the ego. If we didn't have the ego, we couldn't survive. But of course, beyond all of that is the all-encompassing superego, which is the conscience that enables us not to act out those things. Somebody actually said while they were looking at this video of the paedophile, of John Keeble being held under citizen's arrest until the police arrived, which they duly did and took him away. Somebody said he looks like a psychopath. It's kind of difficult, really, because none of us really would ever be able to see what a psychopath looks like. Psychopaths are ordinary people. Psychopaths probably work alongside you. They probably go to the supermarket when you shop. They probably serve you in shops. They probably cook your food in restaurants. They probably deliver your food from Asda or Sainsbury's or wherever you get it from. Psychopaths, genuinely unable to sense empathy or emotion. It's up to the courts, obviously, to decide in his case. Yeah, and there is obviously no excuse. But I felt that I just wanted to share some kind of observations with people who follow my channel on looking at something very dark and very disturbing and very frightening. Naturally, I praise the work of Internet Interceptors and all who do the same thing. I absolutely take my hat off to you, and I honestly and truly hope that you are more and more successful, and I hope that people with any evidence they can contribute about this man will visit the page and add their evidence. But it is, I think, somehow salutary to know that that's going on, and on a scale that we just probably wouldn't even understand. Stay safe, people. I hope those observations help some of you, because I felt I wanted to make them. And once again, well done, Internet Interceptors.